When the most advanced civilization in the galaxy sends an emergency fleet to evacuate your entire species from an incoming cosmic horror, and your response is to ask for the monster's coordinates so you can go say hello, the universe learns something new about the definition of courage. High Curator Vel'thar of the Nexari Collective stood in the observation deck of the Eternal Wisdom, watching the small blue world spin peacefully below. His 6 eyes tracked the orbital patterns with practiced precision while his crystalline neural crown processed thousands of data streams simultaneously. For 8 millennia, the Nexari had served as the galaxy's guardians, monitoring cosmic threats, evacuating endangered species, maintaining the delicate balance that kept civilizations alive. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The humans of Earth represented their 2,847th successful intervention. A young species, barely 3 centuries into their industrial age, completely unaware that their star system lay directly in the path of something that had already consumed 17 solar systems in the past decade. Status report, Vel'thar commanded, his harmonics translator converting his telepathic communications into audible speech for his multi-species crew. Navigation Officer Catherine, a mantis-like being from the Helix sector, consulted her instruments with movements too quick for most species to follow. The Devourer maintains its projected course. High Curator, current velocity suggests it will reach the Sol system in approximately 14 standard rotations. 14 days. Vel'thar's primary eyes dimmed with the weight of familiarity. They had performed this evacuation dance many times before. The procedure was well established. Arrive at the threatened world, explain the situation to local authorities, provide transportation for the entire population to safe colony worlds, and watch another star system become nothing but cosmic dust. Any signs of advanced detection capabilities from the local population? Vel'thar asked. Science Coordinator Ixthara, whose gaseous form shifted between containment fields, rippled with what her species considered amusement. High Curator, their most advanced sensors barely reach their own star's outer planets. They have no knowledge of deep space threats, no understanding of dimensional physics, and their largest ships cannot even leave their local gravity well efficiently. The humans were typical of species at their development level. They had achieved basic spaceflight, established some modest colonies on nearby worlds, and developed primitive weapons that could barely threaten each other, let alone cosmic entities. Their governments were fragmented, their military forces scattered across multiple competing nations, and their technology was roughly equivalent to what most galactic civilizations had possessed 3,000 years ago. Have we identified their primary leadership structure? Vel'thar inquired. Complex and inefficient, Catherine reported. Multiple competing governmental entities, each claiming authority over different geographical regions. No unified planetary command, no single leader with authority to make decisions. For the entire species, this would complicate the evacuation, but not impossibly so. The Nexari had dealt with fragmented civilizations before. Usually, the sight of mile-long starships appearing in orbit was sufficient to unite local factions, long enough to coordinate an evacuation. Vel'thar reviewed the threat assessment data streaming across his neural interface. The entity they had designated the Devourer defied easy classification. It was part living organism, part dimensional anomaly, part something that existing physics couldn't adequately explain. The creature moved between star systems by folding space around itself, consuming not just planets and stars, but the fundamental structure of spacetime itself. Previous encounters had taught the galactic community hard lessons. Military engagement was futile. The Devourer absorbed energy weapons and used them to grow stronger. Evacuated species survived. Those who tried to fight simply disappeared along with their entire solar systems. After the loss of the Karathi hegemony's entire military fleet, galactic protocol had been established. Detect, Evacuate, retreat. High Curator, Vel'thar's form. Shifted to indicate urgency. We're receiving communication signals from the human homeworld. Primitive electromagnetic radiation. But their transmission patterns suggest they've detected our presence. Vel'thar was mildly impressed. Most species at this development level required several hours to notice Nexari ships, even when they didn't attempt concealment. Establish communication protocols, standard first contact procedures, priority message, immediate evacuation required due to incoming cosmic threat. The translation matrices hummed to life, analyzing human languages and communication patterns. The Nexari had perfected the art of delivering terrible news to primitive civilizations. They would explain the threat in terms the humans could understand, offer safe transportation to colony worlds where they could rebuild their civilization, and complete the evacuation before the devourer arrived. It was a routine they had performed hundreds of times. The outcome was always the same: initial disbelief, growing panic, desperate acceptance, and finally grateful cooperation as the harsh reality became undeniable. Communication link established. High Curator. Reported communications specialist Quender, his metallic voice resonating through harmonic frequencies. We're connected to what appears to be their primary military coordination center. They're requesting immediate clarification of our intentions. Vel'thar settled into his command configuration, neural crown glowing as he prepared to deliver the standard evacuation warning. The humans would be frightened, confused, and ultimately helpless in the face of cosmic forces beyond their comprehension. Like every other species, they would need Nexari guidance to survive. Open the channel. Vel'thar commanded. Let us begin the evacuation of humanity. He had no idea that he was about to encounter the first species in galactic history to respond to a cosmic threat, warning by asking for directions to the danger. The first sign that humanity was different came within seconds of establishing communication. Nexari. Vessel, this is Admiral Sarah Chun, Earth Defense Command, came the crisp voice through the translation matrix. We're reading your ship as approximately 3 kilometers in length with energy signatures that exceed our measurement capabilities. Please state your intentions regarding Earth. Vel'thar's secondary eyes blinked in surprise. Most species. First response was panic, religious fervor, or demands to know if the visitors were gods. Humans had opened with a tactical assessment and a direct question about military intentions. Admiral Chun, Vel'thar began, his voice carrying the practiced calm of centuries. I am High Curator Vel'thar of the Nexari Collective. We bring urgent warning of cosmic threat. Your star system lies in the path of an entity that has already consumed 17 solar systems. We are here to evacuate your species to safety. The communication channel fell silent for exactly 7 seconds, long enough for Vel'thar to assume the humans were processing the terrible news according to standard psychological patterns. High Curator, Admiral Chun's voice returned. Can you provide coordinates and trajectory data for this entity? Also, do you have tactical information about its capabilities and any previous engagement records? Navigation Officer Catherine's mandibles clicked rapidly, her species equivalent of choking. Science Coordinator Vel'thar's gaseous form shifted to a confused amber color. Admiral, Vel'thar replied carefully, I believe you misunderstand the situation. This entity cannot be fought. It consumes spacetime itself. Every species that has attempted military engagement has been completely destroyed. Evacuation is the only. Understood. High Curator, Chun interrupted. But we'll still need that tactical data. How long do we have? 14 standard rotations until arrival, Vel'thar answered automatically, his neural crown processing the anomaly. Admiral, with respect, your species lacks the technology to evacuate 8 billion individuals without Nexari assistance. We have colony ships standing by. 8 billion? Chun's voice carried what the translation matrix identified as amusement. High Curator, Earth's population is currently 3 billion across 7 worlds in the Sol system. But that's not the issue. The issue is timeline. Vel'thar felt his primary consciousness stutter. His databases showed human colonies on 3 worlds. Maximum. Admiral, our surveys indicate. Your last survey was probably outdated by the time you ran it. Chun replied, we've been expanding pretty aggressively. But back to the timeline, 14 days is tight, but workable. We'll need detailed specifications on this Devourer's approach vector, dimensional folding patterns, and energy absorption capabilities. Communications specialist Quender's metallic voice resonated with confusion. High Curator, they appear to be requesting combat intelligence rather than evacuation assistance. Vel'thar tried a different approach. Admiral Chun, perhaps you don't fully comprehend the scale of this threat. The Devourer consumed the Karathi hegemony's entire battle fleet in less than an hour. The hegemony possessed weapons capable of destroying planets. Interesting. Chun's response came without hesitation. What was their tactical approach? Did they attempt coordinated strikes or focus fire? Were they using energy weapons or kinetic systems? The bridge of the eternal wisdom had fallen completely silent. In 2,847 evacuations, no species had ever asked for tactical analysis of previous defeats. They asked about transport capacity, colony world locations, or survival statistics. They didn't ask how others had died fighting. Admiral, Vel'thar said slowly, are you suggesting that humanity intends to engage this entity? High Curator, we're suggesting that humanity intends to defend our home. Chun replied, we appreciate the evacuation offer, but will need to decline, however. We would very much appreciate any intelligence data you can share about previous encounters. Catherine's rapid mandible clicking had evolved into what could only be described as hysterical chittering. They want to fight it, she managed between clicks. The primitive species wants to fight the Devourer, not fight, came Admiral Chun's voice. Apparently their communication channel had remained open. We want to kill it. The translation matrix spent several cycles processing that statement, finally settling on a direct translation that left no room for misinterpretation. Science Coordinator Ixthara's form had shifted to a deep red color indicating extreme agitation. High Curator, this is unprecedented. No species has ever refused evacuation to attempt combat with a cosmic-level threat. Admiral Chun, Vel'thar tried once more. Your species possesses technology approximately 3,000 years behind galactic standard. You have no weapons capable of threatening an entity that consumes stars. High Curator, Chun's voice carried a tone that the translation matrix struggled to identify before settling on predatory anticipation. Would you be willing to share detailed specifications on the Devourer's structure and capabilities? We have some ideas we'd like to test. Vel'thar stared at the peaceful blue world spinning below his ship. In 8 millennia of cosmic guardianship, the Nexari had never encountered a species that responded to extinction-level threats by requesting targeting data. Admiral, he said carefully, what exactly are you planning? High Curator, Admiral Chun replied, and the translation matrix detected what could only be described as a smile in her voice. We're planning to introduce this Devourer to something it's never encountered before, which is humans who've been told something is impossible. Vel'thar had made a decision that would haunt Nexari military academies for generations. He shared the tactical data. Perhaps it was scientific curiosity about how a primitive species would interpret information about cosmic-level threats. Perhaps it was the certainty that whatever humans attempted would fail harmlessly. Or perhaps something in Admiral Chun's voice had reminded him that the universe occasionally produced surprises. The data transfer took 6 hours. Complete specifications on the Devourer's structure, energy absorption patterns, dimensional folding capabilities, and detailed records of 17 previous encounters. The Nexari had accumulated this information over centuries of failed defensive attempts by various galactic civilizations. Fascinating, Admiral Chun commented as the transfer completed. High Curator, we appreciate this intelligence. In return, we'd like to show you something, Admiral. Any demonstration you wish to provide will be of scientific interest, Vel'thar replied diplomatically. However, I must emphasize that this entity has defeated weapon systems far beyond your current technological capabilities. Understood. Please maintain your current orbital position and observe Jupiter's fourth moon, Europa. Vel'thar directed his ship's sensors toward the indicated location. Europa appeared normal, a frozen ice world orbiting the gas giant, notable only for its subsurface ocean and primitive microbial life. High Curator, Admiral Chun's voice carried that same unsettling tone of anticipation. You mentioned that the Devourer absorbs energy weapons and uses them to grow stronger. What about kinetic impacts? Kinetic weapons have proven ineffective, Vel'thar replied. The entity's dimensional folding ability allows it to redirect physical projectiles into parallel space. The Zephian Armada attempted mass driver bombardment with projectiles moving at 0.3 light speed. All impacts were absorbed without effect. Interesting. What about really big kinetic impacts? Before Vel'thar could ask for clarification, Europa exploded, not metaphorically. The entire moon simply ceased to exist in a brilliant flash of light and expanding debris. Sensors registered energy levels that should have required antimatter. Weapons far beyond human capabilities, Admiral. Vel'thar's voice carried harmonics of shock. What did you just do? Kinetic test, Chun replied casually. We've been working on some new propulsion concepts. Turns out if you accelerate a small asteroid to about 0.95 light speed, it becomes a pretty effective weapon. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Science Coordinator Ixthara's gaseous form had turned a pale white color. High Curator, the energy reading suggests they just achieved relativistic velocities using an unknown propulsion system. That level of kinetic energy approaches theoretical maximums for matter-based projectiles. How did you accelerate a projectile to near light speed? Vel'thar asked, his neural crown struggling to process the implications. Gravity manipulation, Chun answered. We've been experimenting with localized spacetime distortion. Nothing fancy, just bending gravity to create acceleration fields. Took us about 40 years to figure out the math. Another 30 to build the infrastructure. Catherine's mandibles had stopped clicking entirely. They developed gravitational technology in 70 years. Most species require millennia to achieve basic gravity manipulation. Admiral, gravitational manipulation requires an understanding of higher dimensional physics that typically takes civilizations thousands of years to develop. Vel'thar said. Carefully, High Curator. We had theoretical framework for higher dimensional physics about a century ago. Einstein, Hawking, Chun Nakamura field equations, basic stuff. The hard part was building machinery that could actually manipulate gravity. Fields without collapsing into black holes. Communications specialist Gwynder's metallic voice resonated with disbelief. They refer to higher dimensional physics as basic stuff. Admiral, Vel'thar tried to maintain his composure. The demonstration was impressive, but the Devourer's dimensional folding ability allows it to redirect kinetic impacts regardless of velocity. Right, which is why we're not planning to hit it with projectiles, Chun replied. We're planning to hit it with something else. What else could possibly threaten an entity that absorbs energy and redirects matter? High Curator, what happens when you try to fold spacetime that's already being folded in the opposite direction? The question hit Vel'thar like a plasma torpedo. In 8 millennia of cosmic guardianship, no one had ever asked that question. The Devourer folded space around itself to move between star systems. If something else was manipulating spacetime in the same region, theoretical models suggest severe dimensional instability. Science Coordinator Ixthara said, her form shifting to deep blue, indicating intense calculation, competing gravitational fields in folded space could create cascade failures in local spacetime structure. Exactly, Chun's voice carried satisfaction. We've been running simulations for the past 8 hours using your data. If we can generate opposing gravitational distortions, while the Devourer's attempting dimensional folding, we should be able to create localized spacetime collapse. You want to create a localized spacetime collapse? Vel'thar's harmonics carried disbelief. Admiral, that could destroy your entire star system. High Curator, doing nothing will definitely destroy our entire star system. This way, we have a chance. Navigation Officer Catherine finally found her voice. They developed gravitational weapons in 70 years, specifically to fight an entity they learned about 6 hours ago. Admiral Chun, Vel'thar said slowly, how many of these gravitational manipulation devices do you possess? Well, each of our 7 colonies has basic gravity manipulation for terraforming operations. We've been converting them to weapon specifications for the past few hours. Should have about 47 operational gravitational disruptors ready. By the time your Devourer arrives, 47 gravitational weapons? Ixthara's form had gone completely transparent. Most galactic civilizations possess maybe 3 gravitational manipulation devices total. High Curator, Admiral Chun's voice carried that predatory anticipation again. We appreciate the warning about the Devourer, but we think it's about to learn something important about picking fights with species that solve problems by building bigger hammers. Vel'thar stared at the debris field that had been Europa, realizing that humanity had just demonstrated the ability to destroy moons using technology they claimed to have developed decades ago as a side project. Admiral, he said carefully, what else have you been building? The answer to Vel'thar's question came in the form of Admiral Chun's cheerful invitation. High Curator, would you like a tour of our defensive preparations? We think you'll find them educational, against every principle of Nexari protocol. Vel'thar accepted. The first stop was Mars, where Admiral Chun's shuttle approached what appeared to be a massive mining operation covering half the planet's surface. Resource extraction facility, Chun explained. We've been strip mining Mars for raw materials for about 30 years. Turns out when you can manipulate gravity, moving planetary quantities of matter becomes relatively straightforward. Navigation Officer Catherine studied the sensor readings with growing alarm. High Curator, they've extracted approximately 40% of Mars's total mass. The gravitational disruption should have destabilized orbital mechanics throughout the system. Oh, we compensated for that, Chun replied casually. Artificial gravity generators maintain the original orbital patterns. No point in destroying our own infrastructure while we're building defenses. Science Coordinator Ixthara's form had shifted to a confused purple color. They're using artificial gravity generation to maintain planetary orbits, while strip mining worlds for construction materials. The second stop was Titan, Saturn's largest moon, which no longer appeared to be a moon at all. The surface bristled with massive crystalline structures that reached into space, connected by geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. Processing and manufacturing hub, Chun noted. We converted Titan's hydrocarbon atmosphere into construction materials and built our primary fabrication complex. Current output is roughly equivalent to the industrial capacity of a small galactic civilization. Vel'thar's neural crown processed the implications. Admiral, you've industrialized an entire world in 30 years. 27 years, actually. The first 3 years were just figuring out how to build gravity manipulators that wouldn't accidentally create black holes. Once we solved that problem, scaling up became straightforward. The third stop was the asteroid belt, which had been completely transformed into an enormous geometric structure. Millions of asteroids had been connected by energy beams and gravitational fields, creating what could only be described as a massive 3-dimensional web spanning the entire belt region. Defensive perimeter, Admiral Chun explained. Each asteroid is equipped with gravitational disruptors, energy projection systems, and enough processing power to coordinate with the entire network. If something enters our system and tries to use dimensional folding, It's going to encounter localized space-time distortion from roughly 2-3 million sources simultaneously. Communications. Specialist Quender's metallic voice resonated with disbelief. They've converted an entire asteroid belt into a coordinated weapons network. Admiral, Vel'thar said carefully, this level of construction requires resources and energy generation far beyond what a single star system should be capable of. Supporting. High Curator, you're thinking like someone who can't manipulate gravity. Chun replied, when you can create artificial gravity fields, you can compress matter to much higher densities, extract energy directly from gravitational interactions, and move resources at near-light speeds between construction sites. The energy output of our star hasn't changed, but our efficiency in using that energy has improved significantly. The fourth stop was Earth itself, which appeared normal until Chun adjusted the shuttle's sensors to reveal hidden structures. The entire planet was surrounded by what looked like a second atmosphere made of pure energy. Planetary shield generator, Chun noted. Gravitational field manipulation creates a barrier that can absorb and redirect energy attacks. We tested it against simulated antimatter weapons last week. Works pretty well. Science Coordinator Ixthara had gone completely transparent again. They've created a planetary defense system that can withstand antimatter bombardment using gravitational field manipulation. Admiral, Vel'thar asked, how long have you been preparing these defenses? Well, we've had basic gravitational manipulation for about 70 years, but we really started focusing on military applications about 30 years ago when our deep space sensors detected something big moving in our direction. You detected the Devourer 30 years ago? Vel'thar's harmonics carried shock, High Curator. We've been tracking everything larger than a basketball within 50 light-years of Earth since we developed long-range sensor arrays. The Devourer showed up on our sensors about 30 years ago, moving toward us from the direction of the Karathi system. We've been preparing ever since. Navigation Officer Catherine's mandibles began their rapid clicking again. They've been preparing to fight the Devourer for 3 decades. Admiral Chun, Vel'thar said slowly, your species detected a cosmic-level threat 3 decades ago and responded by converting your entire star system into a weapons platform. High Curator, we responded by building the tools necessary to defend our home. Chun corrected, the weapons are just one application of gravitational manipulation technology. We've also used it for terraforming, resource extraction, interstellar travel, and energy generation. Interstellar travel? Vel'thar asked. Oh yes. We've had colonies in 17 nearby star systems for about 20 years now. Nothing major, just resource extraction and research outposts. We've been sharing gravitational manipulation technology with them, so they've been building their own defensive networks. The shuttle's communication system activated with an incoming transmission, Admiral Chun. This is Commander Rodriguez at Alpha Centauri Station. Gravitational disruptor network is online and ready for coordination with Sol system defenses. Thank you, Commander. How are preparations at the other sites? Procyon, Wolf 359, and Bernard's Star report ready status. The newer colonies are still calibrating their systems, but they'll be operational within hours. Vel'thar felt his consciousness stutter again. Admiral, how many star systems are coordinating with your defensive preparations? 17 fully operational sites, with another dozen still under construction. Chun replied, High Curator, when you're facing something that eats star systems, it makes sense to coordinate your defense across multiple star systems. Communications. Specialist Quender spoke with barely controlled amazement. They've created an interstellar defensive network spanning dozens of star systems in preparation for fighting a single entity. Admiral Chun, Vel'thar said, his neural crown struggling to process the scale of what he was seeing. In 30 years, your species has developed gravitational manipulation technology, industrialized multiple worlds, built interstellar defensive networks, and prepared to fight an entity that has destroyed every military force ever set against it. High Curator, Admiral Chun's voice carried that same unsettling confidence. 30 years is a long time to prepare when you know something's coming to destroy everything you care about. We've had time to think about this problem. And what conclusion did you reach? That the Devourer has never encountered a species that treats physics as a suggestion rather than a law. The Devourer arrived exactly on schedule, emerging from folded space at the edge of the Sol system, like a nightmare made manifest. Vel'thar watched from the bridge of the eternal wisdom as sensors revealed the entity's true scale. 3,000 kilometers of writhing darkness that seemed to devour light itself, surrounded by distorted space-time that made accurate measurement impossible. Energy readings fluctuated wildly as the creature absorbed radiation from Sol and grew visibly larger. High Curator, Science Coordinator Ixthara reported, her gaseous form trembling. The entity's mass is increasing exponentially as it feeds on local stellar radiation. Projected size increase suggests it will be 50% larger by the time it reaches the inner system. Admiral Chun's voice came through the communication system with characteristic calm. High Curator, we're beginning defensive operations. Now you might want to back your ship away from the engagement zone. Admiral, Vel'thar replied. Our records indicate the entity will reach Earth's orbit in approximately 6 hours. What defensive operations can you possibly? The space around the Devourer suddenly erupted with gravitational distortions. The first wave came from the outer system defensive grid. Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus had been equipped with gravitational disruptors that activated simultaneously. Space-time began folding in patterns that opposed the Devourer's natural dimensional manipulation abilities. The entity's response was immediate and violent. Tendrils of pure darkness lashed out toward the distant planets, attempting to drain their energy. Instead of connecting with solid matter, the tendrils encountered artificial gravity fields that redirected the attacks back at the creature itself. Interesting. Admiral Chun's voice noted with scientific curiosity. It's trying to feed on our defensive systems, but the gravitational redirection is forcing it to attack itself, Commander. Torres, how are power levels holding? All systems nominal, Admiral. The creature's own energy is actually strengthening our gravity fields. Vel'thar watched in amazement as the Devourer's attacks were turned against itself. Admiral, how are you redirecting an entity that manipulates dimensional space? High Curator, we're not fighting its dimensional manipulation, we're using it. Our gravitational fields are designed to amplify and redirect the creature's own space-folding abilities. Every time it tries to attack something, we're making sure it hits itself instead. The second wave of defenses activated as the Devourer pushed deeper into the system. Jupiter's moons opened fire with weapons that shouldn't have existed. Beams of compressed gravity that struck the entity and created localized space-time collapse points throughout its structure. The creature's howl of rage and pain resonated across multiple dimensions, causing the eternal wisdom sensors to overload temporarily. When they reset, the Devourer had grown massive tendrils that stretched across millions of kilometers, trying to drain energy directly from Jupiter itself. Phase 2, Admiral Chun announced. Commander Kim, activate the stellar manipulators. Stellar manipulators? Vel'thar asked. His question was answered as Jupiter began to change. The gas giant's massive gravitational field shifted, creating a focused beam of gravitational force that struck the Devourer like a cosmic hammer. The entity found itself caught between its own dimensional folding and Jupiter's artificially manipulated gravity well. We've been practicing with stellar engineering for about 15 years, Chun explained casually. Turns out you can turn gas giants into gravitational weapons if you're clever about manipulating their core dynamics. Navigation Officer Catherine's mandibles had given up clicking entirely. They've weaponized a gas giant. The third wave came from the asteroid belt network. 2 million gravitational disruptors activated in perfect coordination, creating a web of space-time distortion that trapped the Devourer in a maze of conflicting dimensional forces. Every time the entity tried to fold space to escape, it encountered another gravity field that redirected its efforts. The coordination required for this level of gravitational manipulation, Ixthara whispered, should be impossible for any single species to achieve. High Curator. Admiral Chun's voice carried satisfaction. We've had 30 years to practice also. We're not a single species anymore. What do you mean? Soul Defense Network. This is Commander Vel'thar of the Centauri Collective. Came a new voice through the communication system. Nexari gravitational disruptors are online and coordinating with human defensive grid. Vel'thar's neural crown. Process this impossible statement. Admiral, did a Nexari officer just report coordination with human defenses? High Curator, when we reached Alpha Centauri 20 years ago, we found a Nexari research outpost studying gravitational anomalies. They were fascinated by our technology. We've been sharing scientific data ever since. Turns out a lot of species are interested in gravitational manipulation once you show them it's possible. More voices joined the communication network. Helix Station reporting ready status. Came the rapid speech patterns of Catherine's F species. Vraxian Colony 7 acknowledging coordination protocols. Added crystalline harmonics similar to Vel'thar's own people. Admiral, Vel'thar said slowly, how many species are participating in this defense? 17 species with active coordination. Another 32 providing technical support or resources. High Curator. When you offer to share technology that can manipulate gravity, most civilizations are eager to cooperate. The fourth wave was Earth itself. The planet's gravitational shield converted into a massive lens that focused Sol's energy into a coherent beam. Not energy that the Devourer could absorb, gravitational force that compressed spacetime itself into a weapon that struck the entity at the speed of light. The Devourer began to collapse. Its 3,000-kilometer form, compressed as competing gravitational forces overwhelmed its dimensional manipulation abilities. The creature that had consumed 17 star systems found itself trapped in a gravitational prison of its own making. Final phase, Admiral Chun announced. All stations prepare for dimensional severance. Dimensional severance? Vel'thar asked. High Curator. We're going to cut the Devourer's connection to the dimensional space it uses for travel. Without that connection, it becomes just a very large, very angry creature that's subject to normal physics. The gravitational network fired simultaneously 17 star systems, 2 million individual disruptors, and the coordinated efforts of dozens of species created a gravitational pulse that severed the Devourer's dimensional anchors. The entity that had seemed invincible suddenly became mortal, trapped in normal spacetime, subject to conventional physics, and surrounded by the most sophisticated gravitational weapons network in galactic history. The Devourer died in exactly 14 minutes. Soul Defense Network. This is Admiral Chun. Came the voice that had started this impossible engagement. Threat neutralized. All stations report status. 17 star systems reported successful defensive operations. 0 casualties. Complete victory against an entity that had never been defeated in galactic history. High Curator, Admiral Chun's voice carried that familiar tone of predatory satisfaction. Thank you for the warning. This was educational. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened 3 days after the Devourer's death. But this time humanity was invited to attend. Admiral Chun entered the Great Chamber accompanied by representatives from 17 species former Nexari research teams, Helix explorers, Vraxian scientists, and others who had joined humanity's defensive network over the past 2 decades. Vel'thar watched from his observer's position as the political landscape of the galaxy shifted beneath his feet. Honored representatives. Admiral Chun began, her voice carrying the same calm confidence that had preceded the destruction of a cosmic horror. We appreciate this opportunity to address the Council's concerns about recent events. Council Speaker Morthek, an ancient being whose species had founded galactic civilization, leaned forward with obvious confusion. Admiral Chun, our records indicate that humanity achieved faster-than-light travel only 3 centuries ago. How did your species develop technology capable of defeating an entity that has threatened the galaxy for millennia? Speaker Morthak, I think there's been a fundamental misunderstanding about human technological development, Chun replied. We achieved FTL travel 3 centuries ago. We achieved gravitational manipulation 70 years ago. We achieved interstellar colonization 30 years ago. We achieved multi-species technological cooperation 20 years ago. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Species that had been treating humans as newcomers were realizing they had missed 3 centuries of accelerating human development. Admiral Vel'thar spoke from his position. When the Nexari first contacted humanity, your species appeared to possess technology equivalent to early galactic standard. How did we fail to detect advanced gravitational manipulation capabilities? Chun's expression carried what could only be described as polite amusement. Hi, Curator, you detected exactly what we wanted you to detect. When unknown aliens appear in your system, it's generally wise to avoid revealing your full capabilities until you understand their intentions. Science Coordinator Ixthara's gaseous form shifted to deep blue as she processed this revelation. They deliberately concealed their technological advancement during first contact protocols. We concealed our military capabilities, Chun corrected. Our scientific and industrial development has always been open to anyone interested in cooperation rather than evaluation. Council Speaker Morthak activated a holographic display showing galactic territorial boundaries. Admiral, our intelligence suggests human colonies now exist in over 50 star systems. This represents unprecedented expansion for any single species. Speaker, our colonies exist in cooperation with local species in 47 star systems. We don't conquer worlds, we offer technology sharing in exchange for collaborative development. Most species find gravitational manipulation useful for terraforming, resource extraction, and defensive purposes. The truth began to dawn on Council members throughout the chamber. While they had been treating humanity as a minor galactic power, humans had been quietly building the largest cooperative alliance in galactic history. Admiral Chun, came a new voice from the chamber. This is Trade Coordinator Vexlin of the Commercial Guild. Our economic analysis suggests that gravitational manipulation technology could revolutionize galactic commerce, resource extraction, and energy generation. Would humanity be willing to share this technology through established guild channels? Chun exchanged glances with her multi-species delegation before responding. Coordinator Vexlin, we're always interested in expanding technological cooperation. However, we should clarify our terms. Terms? Gravitational manipulation technology is dangerous if misused. We share it freely with species committed to defensive cooperation and peaceful development. We don't share it with species interested in conquest, territorial expansion, or military aggression. The chamber buzzed with conversation as representatives realized that humanity was offering to completely revolutionize galactic technology with conditions. Admiral, Vel'thar asked, what do you mean by defensive cooperation? High Curator, exactly what we demonstrated against the Devourer. Coordinated defense against cosmic-level threats, shared resources for mutual protection, and collaborative development of defensive technologies. We've learned that most threats to galactic civilization come from outside the galaxy, entities like the Devourer, dimensional anomalies, stellar engineers from other galaxies. Council Speaker Morthak leaned back in his seat. Admiral, are you suggesting that humanity has identified additional cosmic-level threats? Speaker, we've identified 17 distinct cosmic-level threats currently moving toward various parts of the galaxy. The Devourer was actually one of the smaller ones. The chamber erupted in alarmed conversations. Navigation Officer Keth Rins' mandibles began their familiar rapid clicking. 17 cosmic threats? Coordinator, our long-range sensor networks have been tracking cosmic anomalies for 30 years. Most threats move slowly enough that we have decades or centuries to prepare defensive responses. The Devourer was unusual because it moved quickly and targeted inhabited systems. And humanity's response to 17 cosmic threats? Vel'thar asked. Chun activated her own holographic display, showing the true scope of human alliance networks. Over 50 star systems connected by gravitational manipulation technology, defensive networks spanning thousands of light years, and cooperative agreements with dozens of species. High Curator, our response is to build the largest cooperative defensive network in galactic history. We offer gravitational manipulation technology to any species willing to participate in coordinated defense against cosmic threats, and species that prefer traditional territorial expansion and military competition. Council Speaker Morthek asked. Admiral Chun's expression became slightly colder. Speaker, species that threaten our allies or disrupt cooperative defensive efforts will discover that gravitational manipulation technology makes excellent weapons as well as tools. The vote was unanimous. The Galactic Council formally recognized humanity's alliance network as the primary defensive authority for cosmic-level threats. Traditional territorial boundaries remained unchanged, but defensive coordination would be managed through human-led networks. More importantly, over 40 species immediately requested inclusion in humanity's technological cooperation programs. Admiral Chun, Vel'thar said as the session concluded, the Nexari Collective would like to formally request full partnership in your defensive alliance. High Curator, Chun replied with a smile. We've been hoping you'd ask. We have some ideas about improving your evacuation protocols that we think you'll find interesting. 6 months later, the first joint human-galactic defensive exercise successfully repelled a dimensional incursion from outside the galaxy using coordinated gravitational manipulation. Across 87 star systems, the entity that had been designated Threat Classification 7 by Human Long Range Sensors was destroyed in less than an hour through the combined efforts of species that had never cooperated before humanity showed them it was possible. Vel'thar stood in his new office aboard the Cooperative Defense Station, watching human engineers work alongside Nexari technicians to improve gravitational disruptor efficiency. The station orbited a star that existed in folded space between dimensions, a construction project that would have been impossible before humanity shared their technology. High Curator, came Admiral Chun's voice as she entered the observation deck. The latest threat assessment shows we've successfully deterred 3 more cosmic entities from entering our galaxy. Word is spreading that this galaxy has active defenses, Admiral, Vel'thar replied, his neural crown processing the satisfaction of effective cooperation. In 8 millennia of cosmic guardianship, the Nexari never imagined that the solution to cosmic threats would be a species that treats physics as a suggestion. Chun laughed, a sound that Vel'thar had learned indicated human amusement rather than aggression. High Curator, we learned something important during our first encounter with cosmic horror. The universe is full of impossible things. The trick is being more impossible than whatever's trying to kill you. And if something even more impossible appears? Admiral Chun's expression carried that familiar predatory confidence. High Curator, we'll ask it politely to leave, and if it refuses, we'll introduce it to some new applications of gravitational manipulation that we've been developing. Vel'thar watched a human construction team use gravity fields to assemble a structure the size of a moon in less than an hour. In the distance, ships from dozens of species practiced coordinated defensive maneuvers that would have seemed impossible just 1 year ago. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. When humans say, "Bring it on" to cosmic horror, the horror should probably reconsider its life choices. The universe would never be the same, and for the first time in galactic history, that was a good thing. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.